Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the Eve Universe Show! Alright, we are going into Chapter 7 of Theodicy. We are getting towards the end. You can watch the previous chapters in the playlist, which should be linked down below, if you want to get caught up. But right now, everything has gone to hell, and basically a bunch of the Minmatar elders, which are like these super secret leaders of the Minmatar people, were taken as slaves from the Iana system, or from the Iana planet, and taken to this mining colony called Demnon. Then the Adhediwani, which is this like super mysterious group that even the Jove seemed to be nervous of, triggered a sleeper agent and caused him to self-destruct, which sent out a signal which lured the Amarians, the Minmatar, and a lone Galentian federal intelligence officer, washed up federal intelligence officer named Viola, to Demnon, where there was a big fight. Almost everybody died. Viola was rescued by two Jovian ships and brought into the Demnon station, along with the Valkyrs, the Minmatar shock troops that were raiding the facility in order to try to rescue the elders. The Amarian leader of the fleet, which was who is the favored of the Emperor, was sent here on effectively a suicide mission by Mekio Sorum, the heir to the Sorum family, where his ship was destroyed and he was captured by the Jovians. However, after some interrogation and torture by first Viola and then Grius the Jovian, the Amarian guy was hold on, what's his name again? I don't remember his name off the top of my head. Was basically renounced his faith, and Grius had him. Oh, sorry. And around that same time, all hell broke loose, and it turns out that the elders are dead. The Valkyrs were led into a trap. The Adhediwani apparently set up a trap for all of them, and in the end, Grius appears to have had the Amarian leader shoot him in the chest, killing him as a way of kind of like giving him legitimacy in order to get him to stop the attacks. So like only one Minmatar is left alive from the Valkyr group and Viola, and Grius is now dead, and the Amarian leader is there. Meanwhile, one system away, a Galentian senator had come to the system in order to try to rescue Viola and deal with the situation. And rather than the Amarians honoring the diplomacy between the two factions, the Amarians shot and destroyed the senator's ship, and it was revealed at the last second that he too was a sleeper agent from the Adhediwani. So, without further ado, we are going to jump into Chapter 7, the final chapter before the conclusion. Nothing could have prepared us for that battle. No prophecy foretold of that destiny, and no sage or priest could find meaning in its cursed aftermath. Ever since that dreadful time came to pass, a powerful demon has come to haunt the faithful of Amar, and its name will always be Vak-Atioth. Rear Admiral Galvik Konst, retired. The Wake Behind, 23-270 AD. In my dream, I was visited by a warrior spirit, who said nothing but pointed towards the gate, where I saw daylight when I knew there should have been darkness instead. The next morning, the slaver that guarded the barracks we lived in lay dead at the entrance, and the glaive collars around our necks had been mysteriously removed. Then we noticed the weapons arranged on the dirt upon which we slept, begging to spill the blood of the ones who made us call him Master. Anonymous, Glaive Wars, Crusural Archives. Domain region, Throne World's constellation, the Amar system, planet Oris, Emperor Family Academy Station. From the darkness of his personal chambers, Grand Admiral Mekioth Sorum observed the procession of the Imperial Navy warships as they approached the hangar. Against all odds, Faust Akradon, that's the Amarian leader, had survived both the ambush by the Minmatar rebels and Demnon and the deadly meteor storm that should have finished him earlier. Akradon's triumphant return to the throne worlds so soon after the loss of the Impervious was being hailed by the Navy as a miracle, and Emperor Hadrian was anxious to hear his ordeal firsthand. As a man who had faced danger countless times before, Mekioth Sorum was unaccustomed to fear, especially when considering the outcome of his decisions. For the first time he could remember, fear was stabbing at his soul, penetrating deeper and deeper with each warship that disappeared into the station. It was a calculated risk, he kept reminding himself, worth the opportunity to secure the power of my lineage forever. But the harsh reality was that Faust still lived, and it seemed inevitable that the truth of what happened over Demnon would be revealed. The real danger was whether or not the two accounts became public knowledge, thereby pitting his own word against the much more popular Akradon's. The Council of Apostles would undoubtedly side with Akradon because of his well-known piety and devotion to the Reclaiming. At best, that scenario would raise concern over the House of Sorum's allegiances to the Emperor, and tempt the other royal families to conspire against him. My lord, the Emperor is waiting. The paladin's words turned his blood to ice. Without acknowledging, he turned and walked past the guards to make his way towards the cathedral. Behind him, the last ship of the procession taxied into docking position. Outside the hangar entrance, the warship was, appropriately enough, an Omen-class cruiser. Essence Region, Crux Constellation, the Rayan System, Planet 9, Moon 4, Federal Intelligence Office Headquarters. Bear took a long pull from his cigarette, his head screaming with a vicious headache, as the men and women in the conference room stared dumbfounded at the monitors arranged high along the carved walls. Moments earlier, the scene was a cauldron of heated, vehement exchanges between the politicians and military officials as they argued bitterly over how to deal with the Amarians. There was only one point that the participants reached consensus on. Under no circumstances was the news of the attack to be released until they agreed on an appropriate response. The Federation could not afford to appear weak or disorganized during wartime, not to its own citizens, and certainly not to the Caldari state. There were 8 large screens in the conference room, one for each news network in the Federation. Every one of them was broadcasting the recording camera footage of the Venture's destruction, taken from the perspective of the ship that was there when the attack occurred. With the exception of Bear and Senator Desaru, there should not have been any non-Amarian eyewitnesses to the event that were still alive, and yet that footage, including a full audio transcript of the exchange between Senator Garrett and the Imperial Navy, was now on public display for every Gallente citizen to judge for themselves. One of the news anchors was midway through delivering a scathing commentary on the barbaric, unprovoked assault of Senator Garrett when Bear's messenger buzzed. He nearly choked when he saw who it was. Abruptly excusing himself from the room, Bear stepped outside and ran as fast as he could down the hall. Bounding into his office, he closed the door behind him, ignoring the shouting demands for explanation by Colonel Sterto. Taking a moment to compose himself, Bear took a seat and inserted the messenger into his desk console. The most recognizable face in Gallente Federation appeared in a holograph before him. "Yes, Mr. President?" Bear asked. Domain Region, Throne World's Constellation, the Amar System, Planet Oris, Emperor Family Academy Station, St. Curia, the Prophet Cathedral. "How could you be so foolish?" Emperor Hadrian demanded, flanking on either side by hooded archbishops and military advisors. "Do you realize what you've done?" Mekioth forced himself to repress an utter contempt he felt towards Hadrian. No one dared to take that down with the Grand Admiral of the Imperial Navy. "My lord, I acted in strict accordance to the instructions that you gave me." "You murdered a Gallente senator," the Emperor wheezed. "One ship, clearly immobilized and outnumbered, 50-1, was no threat to your blockade, Admiral." The blood flowing through Mekioth's veins turned to fire, as he was slowly losing the battle to control his temper. He was instructed to stop his engines several times, and we needed time, you fool! Time to consolidate our gains and convert the masses in the new territories to our faith. Instead, you handed a formidable adversary due cause to interfere directly with the reclaiming! Mekioth was about to shout when a familiar voice called out from behind. The reclaiming grows stronger with each passing moment, Your Holiness, Faust said, walking past the mighty rows of columns behind him. If anything, Grand Admiral Sorum has demonstrated that the strength of our convictions to God will not be deterred by butchers. Faust, my son! Emperor Hadrian gasped, his throne brushing against Mekioth as it floated past to meet the Commodore. The ancient man reached out with 2 quivering arms. Faust leaned forward to return a delicate embrace. It is good to see you again, father. What have they done to you, son? Emperor asked, grimacing at the sight of his mutilated face. Who is responsible for this abomination? Faust took the old man's frail hand, leading his throne back to this aisle, towards the altar where Mekioth looked on impassively. The Galantians, Faust answered, with direct assistance from the Jovians. They killed our priests and tortured me, all in a foolish attempt to force me to deny my faith. In many ways, those 2 despicable races make the Mimitar seem more civilized. Faust turned away from the Emperor and approached Mekioth, standing before him at attention. And to you, Grand Admiral Sorum, I apologize deeply. My insubordination cost me my ship, the lives of my crew, and my entire fleet. If only I had obeyed your order to retreat from Demnon, the Impervious would still be intact. I take full responsibility for my actions, and am prepared to face the consequences. Mekioth was caught off guard, and could find no words to answer with him. What are you doing, Faust? Why are you not seizing this opportunity to slay me? Pardoned, Emperor Hadrian said, moving up the altar. There will be no disciplinary actions by order of my decree. Is that understood, Admiral? Mekioth decided to go along with this most unexpected turn of events. My lord, if there ever was a test of faith so harrowing and cruel as the one that this man just passed, then who am I to question him? Well spoken, Grand Admiral, Emperor Hadrian said, as his throne anchored back into place at the top of the altar. Tell me, Faust, what do you think of the Admiral's decision to kill the Gallente senator? A fitting response to the murder of an apostle, Faust answered. They are animals, father. Barbaric, scavenging animals that prey on the defenseless. And the Jovians, they're barely human, and not nearly as powerful as we were led to believe. The comment surprised Emperor Hadrian. Is that so? What makes you say this? Throughout my incarceration, they kept challenging my faith, insulting everything I believed in, Faust said, looking downward as he spoke. They are godless creatures, father, just like the Galentians, blind to God's creation even as it surrounds them. And they are weak, so much so that I was able to kill one of my captors with surprising ease. You killed a Jovian? Mekioth asked. How did you do this? They bleed as easily as any other creature. When opportunity presented itself, a bullet was more than enough to dispatch my Jovian captor. So I have heard, Faust, Emperor Hadrian said. The guards on Demnon reported how easily the slavers were able to rip the Joves to pieces, despite their cloaking technology. The guards also reported that you are holding prisoners, Mekioth said, his eyes narrowing. What are you doing with them? Purification, Faust answered. Purging their demons and cleansing their souls, in preparation for their eternal service to Amar. Emperor Hadrian chuckled. Excellent! Faust, seeing you here and now and listening to your words reinvigorates my faith. Grand Admiral Sorum, share with us now your plans for reclaiming the Jovians. Mekioth hesitated. My lord, they were completed such a short time ago. Are you certain that... Have you heard nothing that this man said? Emperor Hadrian interrupted. The Jovians are much weaker than we thought. For weeks, the council have been proclaiming the urgency to purge the region alongside our borders of the heathen Jovians and their diabolical ways. At last, we are poised to rejuvenate the reclaiming by ridding humanity of them once and for all. Grand Admiral, there has never been a better time, Faust said. Have faith in your plans, for they will shatter the myth of the Jovians' power once and for all. The influence of this man on the Emperor astounds me, Mekioth thought. One moment Amar must consolidate her gains, and next she must expand her borders faster. You are so certain of this, Mekioth said, studying Faust's swollen eyes and lacerated face. For years, the Jovians have avoided direct contact with us, revealing little of themselves or their capabilities. Yet you can stand here before us, on this very altar, and say with unquestioning faith that you believe, that you know in your very soul, that we possess the strength to reclaim them? Faust dropped to one knee and set his gaze at the great statue of the prophet Curia behind the altar upon which Emperor Hadrian sat. Mekioth, my brother, my faith has never been stronger. The Jovians will fall before the might of Amar. Embrace the Lord, our Father, or be struck down mercilessly by his wrath. Vlad forced himself to open his eyes, a simple act that required an alarming amount of exertion. After a few moments, the soldier realized that he could do little else. The slightest movement produced unbearable pain everywhere throughout his upper torso, which he actually welcomed. What terrified him was that he could feel nothing in his legs, not a single hint of sensation to indicate that they were even still attached. The markings on the ceiling above him were Amarian, triggering the awful memory of how he got reduced to this physical state. The soft sound of a woman's cry filled his ears, followed by the heaves of shallow breathing. Summoning as much strength as he could, Vlad spoke. "Who's there?" There was a pause as the breathing stopped. "You're not real," the quivering voice answered. "The whispers stopped hours ago." Vlad's heart sank as he recognized Viola's voice. "It's me, Vlad. We met on Demnon." Yes, I remember now. You survived. Where are we? What place is this?" "They killed everyone, except for you and I. And then Faust took us in. I don't know where we are." A bolt of pain shot through Vlad's midsection. "Akradon? The Amarian?" "Yes," Viola answered. "He's looking after us, trying to smuggle us out, to get us help." Vlad breathed as deeply as his punctured lungs would allow. The uttered indignity of failure, he thought. What tragedy that those slavers missed the jugular in my neck. "The elders are lost," he gasped, staring at the markings of his mortal enemy on the ceiling. "What have we gained from all of this?" "Closure," she answered weakly, "and a new beginning all at once." Colonel Sertro was still shouting outside of Bear's office, bellowing various threats of punishment for his abrupt departure and blatant insubordination when the door suddenly flew open. "Back into the conference room," Bear said. "Now!" "If you're withholding information from me," Colonel Sertro started, "then you better consider telling me right—" "Tilda, shut the fuck up and tell me and do what I tell you for once," Bear snarled. "And until this knife is taken out of my back, you better start watching yours. Keep your mouth shut when we go back into the conference room. Got it?" Bear turned away from his dumbfounded boss, stormed down the hall, and threw open the glass doors. As everyone inside turned their attention towards him, Bear noted that all but two of the large screens were blackened. Of the two monitors that were still on, the president of the Gallente Federation was visible on one, and a Jovian on the other. Colonel Sertro walked in behind Bear, saw the images on the screen, and turned pale. Without a word, she took a seat. "Welcome back, Lieutenant Colonel," the president stated. "I'll get right to the point. The Jovians have approached us with a retribution plan for the Amarians. Senator Desero and the late Senator Garrett have been lobbying for a similar idea, and I think that you'll find their recommended course of action highly appropriate. After you, Mr. Grius." "Thank you, Mr. President," the Jovian stated. "As indicated to us earlier, your Defense Appropriations Committee overbudgeted for the ongoing war with the Caldari state. Senator Desero and the late Senator Garrett once proposed that the surplus of military equipment be awarded to the Minotaurs. On behalf of the Jovian Directorate, I am offering the full services of our armed forces in the delivery of the equipment to the rebels. I believe that they will now know exactly what to do with it. No additional involvement for us should be necessary." "Excuse me," interrupted Major General Silas Bruce, "but Senator Desero is out of place for commenting on matters related to the war effort, and there's no surplus of equipment as far as I'm concerned. This is a matter for internal affair, and I think we've got it from here." The president's face contorted into a scowl. General, this isn't a war room, and the Jovians are here at my personal request. Mr. President, with all due respect, I strongly object to the Jovians allowing the Jovians to participate in these discussions, and I think that the notion of pursuing a joint operation with them is absurd. General Bruce, you're exactly one comment away from being asked to leave, the president growled. Mr. President, the Jovians have completely absent throughout the war and removed entirely from the political process, but you're still receptive to letting them guide us right into a second war? Have you lost your mind? Get out! MPs, escort the general out of this room right now. I'll excuse myself, General Bruce said, getting up from his seat. I'm not participating in this stupidity. You've lost all sight of the big picture. It's going to come back to haunt you. I beg to differ, Grius said, his black eyes glaring at General Bruce through the screen. The big picture has never been clearer. They are dying, my lord, the Nefintar physician whispered, nervously looking back and forth. The blood vessels around the female's heart and brain are so constricted that ruptures are imminent. She needs medical attention to control her body pressure and withdrawal symptoms, which is only available through the medical bay. Faust inhaled deeply, also taking a look around to make sure that no one was listening. What about the Brutor? I've never seen a man take such punishment and survive, the physician said. I removed as much of the shrapnel along his back and legs as I could, but I can't reach the deeper fragments. Both of his lungs are partially collapsed, and he's paralyzed from the waist down because of the slaver bites near his lower spine. All I could do was give him anti-infective agents, painkillers, and fluids, but that just prolongs his suffering. Lucien, you have my thanks, Faust said, taking the man by the shoulders and looking him square in the eyes. You have family in Kazna? The Nefintar man became confused. My apologies, sire, but I don't understand. Lucien, my old friend, you've been my physician for how long now? 20? Maybe 30 years? Yes, but do you want to see your family again? Faust tightened his grip on the man's bony shoulders, shaking him slightly. Yes or no, Lucien? Answer me honestly. Of course I do, he answered, trembling. God help me, I miss them so. Listen, Faust said. The Emperor has commissioned a new ship for me, the Imperial issue Apocalypse, and my last medical officer was lost on the Impervious. I have designated you as his replacement. Faust pressed a card with the Imperial Navy insignia emblazoned on it into the man's hand. Take this card and bring it to Deck 43 East, to the Naval Armaments Deck. Present your card and you'll be given a uniform and unrestricted access to every part of the ship. The vessel's name is Redemption, and she's been prepped for departure this very moment. Is this a test of faith, my lord? No, man! Faust nearly shouted, tightening his grip and resuming his forceful whisper. The God who made you my servant is dead to me. What I ask of you, I do of my own free will, and not because some ancient text compels me to. The man looked both horrified and amazed at once. The implications of what Commander Akradon was doing were now clearly understood by the physician. Why are you doing this? Because everything in my life has been a lie, Faust answered, and failing to recognize that earlier is something I will regret for the rest of my life. This single act alone won't atone for the evil that I willfully embraced. But I've been wrong about everything, Lucien. Everything. The Nefintar was about to speak, but Faust quickly placed his hand on his mouth. You need to understand that there is no turning back now. If you attempt to betray me, I will destroy you. Slave's word will never win merit over my own, Lucien. Never. Faust removed his hand. Lucien considered all the facts quickly, like a good physician always does before committing to a decision that would have drastic consequences, regardless of the outcome. Tell me what I must do to see my family again. So it is settled, the president said. We will provide you with a list of stations containing the equipment to be transported within the hour. Good, Grius answered. Jovian industrials are already approaching your nation's borders and will hold until they receive final destination waypoints from you. Harbor control at each of these stations will be instructed to pass your industrials through as our own Iterons, Bear said, checking the notes. The yard engineers will load the equipment onto their designated industrial types and clear your departure as soon as they finish. After that, Bear exhaled, tossing his datapad onto the table and leaning back into his seat. The rest is up to you. I would like a word with the President, Senator Desaru, and Lieutenant Colonel Gesternow in private, please, Grius asked, as the rest of the people in the room exchanged glances. We have some personal matters to discuss that do not concern anyone else. Certainly, the President answered. If your name wasn't mentioned by Mr. Grius, please excuse yourself and get to work on your assignments right away. Bear watched as the group gathered their things, some with urgency, others with reluctance, and made their way towards the exit. After a few moments, Bear was alone with Senator Desaru. Viola Antones was alive as of 2 hours ago, Grius started. But her physical condition was grave, and we have not been able to determine her whereabouts since. The three of you should know that it was her efforts which convinced us to interfere on behalf of the Mimitar, and despite her imperfections, she is by far one of the most impressive individuals we have ever worked with of any race. She has restored certain beliefs we once held about humanity. Our concern for her well-being is as sincere as your own, and we will do everything we can to return her to safety. Bear felt a mix of emotions assault him as the words of the mysterious Jovian set in. Relief, amazement, admiration, and above all, vindication. You also need to know that the elders taken to Demnon are dead, and the Mimitar Republic, consisting of all 7 united tribes, will be impossible. All of the elders representing the Starkmanir, Nefendar, and Thucker tribes are lost. We have been in direct contact with the remaining elders, discussing with them how their weapons that you procured will be distributed. They share our sentiment for Viola Antones, and they asked me to relay their indebtedness to the Gallente Federation for the dedication of her talents to their cause. Who killed them? Senator Desaru asked. The prison guards? It appears that the elders were murdered either during or immediately after the riot was put down, but not by the prison guards. They did not discover the bodies until after the Valkyr rescue operation was compromised. But then who tripped off the guards to their presence? Bear asked, realizing the answer right after finishing the question. The Order, Grius answered. Like the Amarian priests they murdered just to incriminate Viola, the elders on Demnon were murdered by the Order, despite all the visible indications that they were trying to help them. Wait a minute. What is this Order all about? The President asked. I'll brief you after, Senator Desaru said. It's the biggest state secret you'll wish you never knew about. Bear was stunned. Why would they do such a thing? To draw the Gallente Federation into war with the Amar Empire, Grius said. The Order's immense power is a menace even to us, and yet the expanse of the Amar Empire appears to have threatened them directly. Grius stopped mid-sentence, tilting his head to one side. Please excuse me, the Jovian said. We've located Viola. Val slipped backwards from the screen, recoiling from the image that his soul refused to accept. You should not be leaving Grius. Oh, you should not be living, Grius, he stammered. I saw you. Stop. Do not tell me how I met my death, Faust, Grius warned. In time, reanimation silence will reveal itself to the other races. But until then, we will see as demons to those who hold religion accountable for immortality. Those beliefs are dead to me, Faust reminded himself. I have Viola Antones, and the Valkyr soldier known as Vlad, he started. My notes indicate that is your intent to help them, or your intent was to help them, Grius said. Has that changed? Faust's head was starting to spin as he struggled with the reality of having a conversation with someone that he just executed a few hours earlier. Faust? No, Grius. I'm trying to help them, but they're not doing well, and I can't get them the medical attention that they need without revealing it to all the Amar what I intend to do. Faust produced a tiny disc and inserted it into the console. Pausing for just a moment, his fingers hovered over the control that would send Grand Admiral Sorum's complete battle plans for the reclaiming of the Jovians Directorate to Grius. Event Horizon, he thought. The words he spoke to Lucian rang through his memory. No turning back. He studied the reflection on the screen for just a moment. Amar is dead to me. The encrypted data was transmitted. Read that. Grius appeared to be reading quickly, his pale face moving back and forth in twitching motions. Back at Dioth, the Jovian asked. When? It has begun already. Warships are en route to the rally point alongside the Geminite border. The Emperor himself has asked me to lead the attack. Right this moment, the docking gantries are being removed from my ship. Once I reach the Obanan rally point, my orders are to jump into Atioth's system and destroy everything in our path. Your outposts, your stations, your planetary settlements, all of it. Grius's black eyes seemed to stare through him for a moment before he spoke again. How will you save yourself when the time comes? A Nephindar physician is on board doing what little he can to keep both Vlad and Viola alive. All I ask is for your fleet to spare my ship until near the end to maximize the illusion of divine leadership. When you see the cargo containers jettisoned from my ship, we'll be inside. Faust took a deep breath. And then our lives will be in your hands. Grius continued his devious, cold stare. My associates have just confirmed the movement of Imperial Navy warships in precise accordance with the plans that you have delivered. We are convinced that you are being truthful. I don't know what that means anymore, Faust said as the lines in his brow deepened. You take what I'm telling you however you like. I'll be at Vakatioth within the hour. As will I, Faust, to give you the thanks of the Jove in person after we move you to safety. There's one more thing I need. Ask, friend. A Mimitar battleship is stranded in the High Hills system. Her name is the Hellwraith. I know that they're still being hunted, and it's just a matter of time before the Navy destroys them. Faust thought back to the relentless attack that ship had unleashed, remembering how determined the Valkyr force was to destroy the Impervious no matter the cost. It was personal, he realized. Ship captains don't put their crews at risk like that unless it's personal. Please, Grius, do what you can for them. Far below the entrance to Emperor Hadrian's Cathedral, powerful beams of light broke through the plane of the hangar doors and pierced the dark veil of space beyond. Behind those beams, the Goliath warship Redemption, more than 1,600 meters long from bow to stern, slowly began to emerge from the station. From the perch of his personal command center, Grand Admiral Makioth Sorum admired the majestic vessel for a moment, and then turned his attention back to the holographic star map. The location of 200 ships, the total number of vessels that his Atioth battle plan called for, was displayed as the myriad of golden dots scattered across the command center. One by one, the dots were converging on a point that sat directly on the Jovian border in Metropolis. From here, he thought, I shall secure my family's place at the head of all tables. Makioth could not remember a time that he felt more certain of the outcome of a battle. The exuberance of his crew, the blessings of the church, and the excitement of the Amarian populace was overwhelming, and, of course, there was the irony that the man he tried to destroy would now be handing him the key to an empire. Perhaps I misjudged him, he thought, or his faith blinded him so completely that he fails to consider all of the possibilities, including the unthinkable. Fully clear of the station's main structure, the Redemption started its turn into history. Bear found himself wandering through the great halls of the station, passing aimlessly through every section that his clearance level would allow him to. More than 26 hours had passed since he had slept. Considering the magnitude of the events he'd helped set into motion, sleep was the furthest thing from his mind. Already there was reports of unidentified spacecraft arriving at various stations across the Federation, all of which were casually dismissed by government officials as the imagination of drunks. There was nothing more that could be done, except for wait and find out the culmination of years of struggle, of proving to the Federation just how dangerous it was to ignore the evils of mankind, finally prove worthwhile. Pausing in a great corridor lined with windows, Bear took in the majestic view of the bluish-green gas planet of Rayan 9 and its celestial background of distant nebulae and countless stars. His thoughts kept wandering back to Viola, of the tumultuous past that they shared and the differences they'd failed to reconcile until this moment, when everything they believed hung in the balance. I'm sorry I ever doubted you, he thought. Lightning fired across the blackness again, and Vlad could feel the muscles of his face reflexively wince from the pain that awakened him. Struggling past the drug-induced haze of his consciousness, Vlad managed to open his eyes. The blurred image focused into the unmistakable outline of an older Nefintar standing above him. The man caught his cloudy stare and then reached forward to place a gentle hand on his forehead. Be calm, Vlad. I'm changing your wound dressing. We're going to get you help very soon. The Valkyr warrior remembered that he was supposed to hate Amarian corroborators. Nefintar? The elder man looked up for a moment, then continued to work. Yes, I once killed Nefintar traitors. Vlad remembered the images of his knife passing cleanly through the necks of men who had betrayed his tribe to the paladins. The man lifted a bloody bandage, tossed it to the side, and examined the wound with an electronic eyepiece. Traitors. Vlad was starting to realize that hatred was all that remained for him to draw strength from. With delicate hands, Lucian began to place fresh nanogauze strips onto the slaver wounds gouged into Vlad's abdomen. Then he asked a simple question. Do you have any children? The image of the corpses in Demnon miners came back, and Vlad felt pangs of sadness pierce his heart. Traitor! Lucian stopped working for a moment. If you did, then you would understand that as a father, you'd be prepared to do anything to make sure that they outlived you. Vlad was barely clinging onto consciousness as Lucian cut away the excess strips of dressing, even if it meant a life of servitude. You would sell your soul, Brutor. As a father, you would understand that. You would. The Valkyr's eyes closed again. No. Not like this. Lucian checked the soldier's heart rate. It was weak, but steady. Attention, Hellwraith. This is the Jovian cruiser Listhos, broadcasting from 1059 megahertz. Do you copy? Over. Karth looked up from his haze, stared into the mangled bridge, and wondered if he was hearing things. Hellwraith, we see that your subspace comm arrays are disabled. Please acknowledge on 1059 megahertz. Over. The navigation officer scrambled to his feet. Admiral, that's a radio frequency broadcast. Look! Just a few hundred meters from where Karth was slumped over, 4 Jovian Phantom-class cruisers were uncloaking within plain view of the forward bridge portal. Hellwraith, we are here to evacuate your crew. Please respond. The navigation officer made conscious decision to overstep the well-defined boundaries of Naval Command rules. Karth saw the officer reaching for the console-based radio transceiver and became enraged. He opened his mouth to scold the man, but it was too late. Listhos, this is Hellwraith, the officer said. We are standing by to receive your assistance. Over. Lucian, the intercom squawked. I'm coming in. The cargo door seal hissed open, and Faust strode into the dark confines. How are they? He asked. The physician was about to answer when Viola awakened with a loud shriek. No! I have to warn him! Lucian moved quickly towards Viola, who was struggling against the restraints attaching her to the stretcher. He pressed his fingers into her wrist, feeling a pulse. Easy, Viola. Don't exert yourself. I need to see him, he breathed. Where is he? I know Faust is in here. Faust approached her, placing his hands on hers. I'm here, Viola. It's going to be all right. No, no, she gasped hysterical. I know who it is now. In the nightmares I have. I know who lies inside the crypt. It was becoming difficult for Faust to retain his composure, seeing her like this. Viola, you need to resist. You need to rest. It will be... Listen to me, she screamed. All this time I thought that the person in there was me. All those times when I pulled inside. But now I know it was not me at all. And I'm scared of what they'll do once I tell him. Shh. Be still, Viola, Faust said, feeling such a strong compassion for her that it was nearly unbearable. It will be over soon. We are getting you help. The demons! Can you hear them? They're whispering again. Faust, they don't want you to know. Don't want me to know what, Viola? They don't want you to know it's you. All this time. You! Faust stood at the bridge of the Redemption, observing the perfect formation of the Imperial warships stretched across the staggered line nearly 60 kilometers long. His bridge officers stood at rigid attention by their post. The junior officers in the trenches below him remained fixed on the screens before them. This is their great moment, Faust thought. Men who dreamed of a day when they would serve under the command of the greatest Navy hero in Amarian history. Paladins whose faith in God blinds them to the fact that they are following the orders of a fallen angel, of a traitor, whose betrayal will eclipse all others in the history of our race. Though outnumbered 2-1, the Jovian fleet amassed directly across from them remained motionless. Defiant, Faust thought, repressing the urge to smile. Daring us to strike first. Those Jovians have much more heart and emotion than the empires give them credit for. Weapons, Faust commanded. On this day, God will abandon Amar's side. Yes, my lord. And stand firm with the Mimitar. Assign turrets 1 through 7. Radio crystals. Designate target Omega-1. Target Omega-1 locked. Faust allowed himself to smile. For the Emperor! The entire bridge replied in emboldened unison. For the Emperor! For Viola, Faust thought. For restoring my sight. Fire! And that is it for Chapter 7. I would like to give an extra special thanks to all of my supporters, especially my co-designers, Abyssus, Aikawarazu Chan, Arydanika the Queen, BlackRoseNoble, Dajat Lemmont, Drake, GuldanAgeStories, J. Kuhn, LM1, Malak Starfire, Midnight Space Monkey, Not Just Fun, Seeds Aplenty, Serenolin with No Eyes, Syliana Vel'ash, Nephilim, Grendel, and Zaul Nex, as well as my Immortal Tier supporters, Ebo1337 and Rid. Thank you all so much. And in addition to them, I of course want to thank all of you who watch my videos, like them, subscribe to the channel, support it by sharing it around and helping get this information out there. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by joining my Patreon, becoming a member on YouTube, checking out some of the merch that we have, get some swag, whatever. But either way, I thank you just for being here. And until next time, I have been Ashrothi, the voice of New Eden, and I'll see you in space.